Nancy, I guess it was no surprise, given the political climate and the start of the Trump administration, that immigration and the border would make headlines. And 2017 did not disappoint in that regard.
It did not. The biggest issue, I think, in 2017 has been undoubtedly the border wall, both those in favor of it and those in opposition to it. As you well know, it was one of the premier promises by then candidate Donald Trump, and his base has held him to that promise: build that wall. Donald Trump has a vision. If you build it, they won't come.
They built the Great Wall of China. That's 13,000 miles. Here we actually need 1,000. We're going to have people come in, but they're coming in legally.
Not so fast, says Michael Deere, the author of Why Walls Won't Work.
It's nonsensical. Walls always come down.
Deere, a professor of urban planning at the University of California at Berkeley, has spent 3 years traveling and studying the U.S.-Mexico border.
The simple fact of the matter is that on a global scale, walls are an admission of failure in geopolitics, a failure in international relations. Because you can't figure out a diplomatic solution, you build a wall.
Deere says as long as poverty and desperation exists in Mexico, no wall will keep people from trying to find a better life in the U.S. I'm Nancy Montoya, Arizona Public Media. Wednesday afternoon rush hour on Tucson's east side. Paralee Snyder is one of the organizers of several such rallies at street corners around Tucson. She says Trump is doing what he promised.
And so it's a comfort to me that he was elected and that he is now working on implementing his promises to the American people.
Pima County Republican Chairman David Eppheimer says he supports Trump's moves for mass deportations and wanting those who enter the U.S. legally to assimilate quickly.
This country is about a unified America with the one language. I would say come within our society, assimilate, and be like us.
Organizers say they plan more rallies, including one next week, outside Arizona Republican Senator John McCain's office to protest his criticism of Donald Trump. I'm Nancy Montoya, Arizona Public Media. Two officials along the border say President Trump's executive order for the wall was no surprise to them, but they say he needs more information that they are willing to provide before the work begins. One place he can get that is on the Tohono O'odham Nation, which shares a 75-mile border with Mexico. Families from the nation live on both sides.
We would invite President Trump to come down so we can have a mutual discussion.
Tribal Vice Chairman Verlin Jose says because it's remote and the border in some areas is protected by little more than a barbed wire, he worries that the nation will be the first place work will start on the wall.
And as I said, we could walk the border together to talk about some of the things.
That's invitation one. Invitation two is coming further east along the border in Nogales. Mayor John Doyle wants the president to see in person how border communities work together.
Local communities like ours that go from Tijuana down to Brownsville have been working on keeping good relationships with Mexico through Nogales, our Mariposa port of entry, the biggest port of entry in Arizona. We have billions of dollars coming through here.
But for the vice chairman of the nation, there is no dollar value that can be placed on the border. The nation opposes a wall and says tribal leaders will first try to reason with the president.
We've always stated that no matter who or how, we would like to work together. That's just been our history, and our culture is about working together. Even on the first European contact, we opened our doors and said, come in, sit down. We've never resisted until we had to resist.
The vice chairman adds that while they invite President Trump to walk the border with the Tohono O'odham people and experience the land, they will fight to resist a wall.
The nation will stand up. History has it that many of our men and women have joined the armed forces, not only for the nation, but for the United States of America. People will stand up and defend their home, whether I'm talking about their house, their community, their nation. It's just in our blood to defend and protect.
In addition, say both community leaders, who really is going to pay for the wall?
And the cost that it's going to have, it's not only coming out of my pocket, it's coming out of your pocket. It's coming out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Mayor Doyle says a wall is not only a waste of money, but a waste of effort. Effort, he says, that needs to be placed on drawing Mexico closer to the U.S. He says it's about trade and families and neighbors helping neighbors.
And a slap like this to Mexico does not help. It's a negative move, and we will be affected, nationally by the jobs that are related on the southwest border.
Now, Mayor Doyle says, to Trump's credit, he did visit the Arizona border during the campaign. And even with repeated invitations, President Obama never came to the Arizona border. Both leaders say while their reasons differ, Mayor Doyle is about trade and jobs, while the vice chairman is about respecting traditions and the land, both agree the wall will cause great harm. From the border, I'm Nancy Montoya, Arizona Public Media.
There's been a great deal of conversation about building a wall.
And with that, Arizona Senator John McCain began the questioning to consider retired Marine Corps General John Kelly, Donald Trump's pick to head Homeland Security. Senator McCain asked the general if a wall is practical or even necessary.
Physical barrier in and of itself will not do the job. It has to be really a layered defense.
General Kelly says that includes putting more time and money into stopping the drug cartels.
If you were to build a wall from the Pacific to the Gulf of Mexico, you'd still have to back that wall up with patrolling by human beings, by sensors, by observation devices.
General Kelly led the U.S. Southern Allied Command responsible for American military operations in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. I'm Nancy Montoya, Arizona Public Media. January and February are traditionally slow months for those visiting Tucson from Mexico. But all over southern Arizona, merchants say it's been slower than usual.
There might be some individuals that will decide to hold off and stay in Mexico because, again, they're passionate, they're angry.
Felipe Garcia heads up strategic partnerships and Mexico marketing for Visit Tucson.
This is not the way to solve a problem.
What is the way to solve the problem?
Something, I think we need to have a stronger, better dialogue with our elected officials. I mean, all of this is happening at a national level, at the top of the White House and the top of Los Pinos.
Now, Los Pinos is a Mexican White House. Garcia says here's what the occupants of the two national seats of power can learn from the way Arizona and Sonora do business.
That it's about personal relations, communication, understanding that we're working together.
He says Tucson will continue to build a relationship that can withstand policies and politics from both sides. I'm Nancy Montoya, Arizona Public Media. There are no official numbers from Customs and Border Protection on the size of this latest surge of Central American women and children. We do know that a high-level agency official asked the United Methodist Bishop responsible for southern Arizona for help.
It's chaos in here.
Well, we put all the stuff together.
So, two churches under the leadership of Reverend Roland Loomis got started converting one undisclosed church basement.
People ask, do we have money for this? And we're like, no, we don't know. How long is it going to last? We don't know. How many people? Up to 40 or 50 a day. We don't know. But we knew as a church that this is something we were called to do.
Late yesterday, the National United Methodist Committee on Relief granted these churches money for the effort. The amount? $60,000. That will pay for food. But the two United Methodist churches say they still need more supplies and volunteers. I'm Nancy Montoya, Arizona Public Media.
And of course,
walk into this room in Nogales, Sonora, and you hear English and Spanish flowing seamlessly among people and topics. This is the Border 2020 Commission, a meeting between Mexican and U.S. officials. They're here to talk about working together on cross-border issues like water, air, and emergency preparedness.
Environmental issues, contamination, air, water does not recognize international political borders.
Amanda Stone is with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. Luis Carlos Salazar is her counterpart from the state of Sonora.
And because Mother Nature doesn't know about boundaries, doesn't know about borders, doesn't know about walls.
Both are quick to add that this is nothing new for this binational team. Members have been working together for more than 3 decades. In Nogales, Sonora, I'm Nancy Montoya, Arizona Public Media.
Since the summer of 2000, more than 6,000 men, women, and children have died trying to cross the desert terrain of the U.S.-Mexico border. The more than 300-mile Arizona-Sonora border is one of the most dangerous to cross. Compounding this tragedy, many border crossers die alone, and very often their families are left without knowing their loved one's fate. A group in Cochise County called Pilgrimage of Remembrance has made it their mission to place homemade crosses near the places where migrant remains were found and to invite community members to a sacred ceremony commemorating those who died. Nancy Montoya picks up the story in a desolate area of the Dragoon Mountains near Texas Canyon.
The stillness of the desert is deafening. South, over the rugged terrain, is Mexico, but the border is obscured by sheer cliffs and granite domes shaped in odd formations. This is Texas Canyon, also home of the famed Cochise Stronghold. The area is so difficult to traverse that in the mid-1800s, Cochise, the chief of the Chiricahua Apache tribe, and more than 1,000 of his followers eluded the U.S. Army for 15 years. Looking at the rough terrain, it's easy to understand how impassable it would be to some. There are now dirt roads leading into the area, and that's where we find more than 30 individuals walking solemnly in line. The only sound, a beat of a drum and Native American rattles, and then a spirited voice, first in Spanish, then English. They are a diverse group of adults and even children. They are Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, and over the past few years, many volunteers have come from around the world to plant a cross in memory of someone who died trying to cross from Mexico into the U.S. So far, 300 crosses have been planted.
He drew his last breath north of here in the Texas Canyon area last summer, about the middle of July. Ramon Contreras Ramos.
Pat Cutting made the cross the group was carrying today into the desert in honor of Ramon Contreras Ramos. She says she felt an almost spiritual connection to him.
Well, you know, I could feel him as I was making the cross. There was a little dove that kept making all this fuss, and as I was painting his name, and when I finished doing it, he flew away. So it was just really beautiful.
Ramos was 36 when he died.
But I could feel him. I knew he was married. I knew he had a sense of humor. I knew he was a good man. He had He didn't want to be 40. So God has a sense of humor, you know.
It is with great respect that she and others form a circle around an area where the cross is to be planted. I asked Mike Crecci, a soft-spoken man in his late 60s, why he was here.
I guess it's because I'm moved by the scale of death in the desert here, and so many people have lost their lives, and that's affected for family and friends far and wide. I also want to mention that I work with Humane Borders and I help update the map of migrant deaths. So it's a big part of my life.
Standing near the site where the cross is to be staked, a woman lifted her head from prayer.
I'm Pat Ferrick. I'm a school sister in Notre Dame.
Now, the School Sisters of Notre Dame was established in 1833 and serve in 5 continents. Fighting for human rights is a big part of what the order does.
I think the emotion, strongest emotion was basta, no more of this. You know, we've been to too many of these, and we know that there are so many others. It has to stop, you know.
Maria Ortiz made the pilgrimage with her brother and young niece, her eyes filled with tears as she tries to explain how she feels.
Well, can I get touched? But it's such a sad, it's a great opportunity to be here, but it's also very sad. I couldn't even fathom the idea of someone feeling that desperation. So, I mean, all the blessings in the world to his family, and we know that he's in a better place.
As 2 men use a pick and shovel to break the hard ground where the cross will go up, a Native American prayer is shared.
We come here only in passing. We don't own all that is given to us. In this journey, we eat, sleep, and dream. And whenever you are ready, O Maker of Life, we'll come home to you. And whenever you are ready, O Maker of Life, we'll come home to you. Saginika venash para pi.
Ramon Contreras Ramos. He died alone last year from exposure to the unforgiving Arizona sun. But today, he is not alone. He's remembered by strangers. For Arizona Spotlight, I'm Nancy Montoya.
The group Pilgrimage of Remembrance holds regular commemorations along the border. We have a link for information on the Arizona Spotlight page at azpm.org.
There is no federal definition of a sanctuary city, but Attorney General Jeff Sessions says it doesn't matter what cities call themselves. His staff will decide if they are cooperating with immigration agents.
Today, I'm urging states and local jurisdictions to comply with these federal laws.
Tucson Police Chief Chris Magnus says that's a problem for his department.
We neither have the resources nor the intention to become an extension of federal immigration enforcement efforts, nor is that something that our community wants.
The all-Democratic City Council has declared Tucson an immigrant-welcoming city rather than a sanctuary city. Mayor Jonathan Rothschild says the word sanctuary is polarizing. Councilwoman Regina Romero says it's all rhetoric.
The word is a word is a word is a word. For me, it's the policy that we move forward. If not using sanctuary, we'll move forward policy within the city of Tucson that will protect its residents, then let's not use the word sanctuary.
Pima County Republican Party Chairman David Eppeheimer says he agrees. It's not what name city officials use, it's the policies.
I like to say the old saying is if it waddles like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Now, regardless of how Tucson is described, if immigration officials feel Tucson police are not cooperating, federal grant money to TPD will be cut off. That's the word from Attorney General Sessions, and he cites the president's authority.
In his executive order, he stated that it is the policy of the executive branch to ensure that states and cities comply with all federal laws, including all immigration laws.
Councilwoman Romero disagrees.
The federal government and Trump cannot force, coerce, or bully cities to do federal government work.
Republican Party Chair Eppheimer responds that he thinks compliance is legally required.
Yeah, but if you believe that this detainee is unlawfully present in the United States, don't you have an obligation to alert the federal authorities?
But determining that, says Councilmember Romero, takes time and money and resources the city doesn't have. She's just back from a national conference in New York, where she met with officials from dozens of other cities that, like Tucson, face the threat of defunding. She says Tucson is not alone in insisting that local police have no legal obligation to enforce federal immigration laws.
In my attendance to this conference in terms of policy, discussing the facts versus the fiction, I came back knowing and that much more confident that the city of Tucson has the right to say, no, we will not do that.
She points out that the full city council is united on the city's immigrant-friendly policy.
We have 7 of us saying we believe in this and we will stand together to defend the rights of Tucson residents, no matter of status.
A growing number of cities are already suing the federal government over the issue, and Councilwoman Romero says some have asked Tucson to join them in court. The city council has made no decision about that. I'm Nancy Montoya, Arizona Public Media. Last year, all 50 U.S. states used Arizona ports of entry to export goods to Mexico. The border counties of Pima, Santa Cruz, Cochise, and Yuma all benefit from those ports. But there is increasing frustration that immigration policy issues and the Trump administration's relationship with Mexico are starting to hurt trade.
Economic development does not end at the border.
Teresa Bravo heads up a new coalition of the 4 border counties. Her goal is to protect Arizona's relationship with Mexico, and she says this is not about politics.
We have the support of Congressman Grijalva. There is the support of Congresswoman McSally. And as you probably have seen, Senator Flake and Senator McCain have been very proactive and very pro-Mexico.
What is good for Arizona, Bravo says, is good for the country. I'm Nancy Montoya, Arizona Public Media. Department of Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly issued 2 memos spelling out implementation of the president's order.
These orders are a matter of national security. It is my sworn responsibility as the Secretary of Homeland Security to protect and defend the American people.
The plan casts a wide net with even those who have been in the country for decades with no other legal status subject to deportation. The only groups safe for now are those brought to the country illegally as children and those in the country illegally whose children are U.S. citizens. Both are protected under orders issued first by President Barack Obama and allowed to stay in place by President Trump.
Again, even though we want to be optimistic, we have to be very cautious.
That's Karina Ruiz of Phoenix. She's a Deferred Action recipient, better known as a dreamer. She graduated from college and now heads up an Arizona group called Dream Keepers. She fears that while the deportation implementation plan excludes dreamers, the government has registration information on her and more than 600,000 other dreamers around the country.
So there's going to be a lot of dreamers that are going to be targeted, even though he didn't come out and say, well, we're not going to come after these kids. With this order that he gave, it puts a lot of our dreamers at risk.
Now, immigration advocates in Arizona and across the country have sprung into action.
Again, in Arizona, we've lived through SB 1070, and we've learned how to fight back.
Petra Falcon, the head of Promise Arizona, took part in a national conference call Tuesday to outline actions. She says a full court press will be aimed at Republican U.S. Senator Jeff Flake from Arizona.
Senator Flake has been a champion of immigration reform in the past, and we need him back in that fight, especially in the face of President Trump's mass deportation efforts and the rampant fear it is creating for immigrant families here in Arizona and across the country.
At the top of the list in rolling out the executive order, hiring 15,000 more enforcement officers for the explicit role of finding and deporting immigrants in the country illegally. And plans for expanding the border wall have been accelerated and are a big part of Homeland Security's marching orders from the president.
We'll begin immediate construction of a border wall.
That's President Donald Trump 3 weeks ago, eliciting swift reaction along the Arizona-Sonora border.
And a slap like this to Mexico does not help.
Nogales, Arizona Mayor John Doyle said it would hurt trade.
It's a negative move, and we will be affected, nationally by the jobs that are related on the southwest border.
This goes well beyond the undocumented community.
Tucson immigration lawyer Bo Goldman says he saw a draft version of the implementation plan a few days ago before it was official.
People want to feel secure and want that, idea and protection that they are going to, take care of themselves. We take care of each other in this country, and we should. But you can't do that and cut off ties with other countries or alienate other countries, not in this global environment.
Goldman adds that the deportation policies of the Trump administration will take a human toll on those separated from families and a financial toll on Arizona businesses that rely on international trade and goodwill. I'm Nancy Montoya, Arizona Public Media.